Hello everyone. Today, I will recap the movie Venom. A spaceship belonging to the Life Foundation Corporation, on its way back to Earth, suddenly exploded and crashed in eastern Malaysia. The ship carried 4 alien objects, one of which escaped. The rest were transported to a research center in the US. A female police officer discovered an astronaut who was still alive. She took him to the emergency room, but on the way, he woke up and attacked her. The parasite from the pilot's body transferred to the female police officer. She tore the car apart and got out, holding the Life Foundation logo in her hand. Back in San Francisco, we meet Eddie Brock, a reporter who specializes in investigating illegal underground activities to defend the poor. He is a man who represents justice. This time, the editorial board assigned him the task of interviewing Carlton Drake, the founder and director of the Life Foundation Corporation. The editor-in-chief wanted him to flatter Carlton, but Eddie felt unhappy about this and reluctantly agreed. Eddie was living with his beautiful girlfriend, Anne, and the two were preparing to get married, and worked for a law firm that represented the Life Foundation. After the date, Eddie drove his girlfriend home on his motorbike, and the two had a fun evening together. While Anne was sleeping, Eddie opened the refrigerator to get a drink. He accidentally saw that Anne's computer was still on. Curiosity got the better of him, and he secretly looked at the Life Foundation's confidential documents regarding recent accusations. The next morning, Carlton gave a wonderful speech to some children, where one girl raised her hand to express her feelings. Carlton praised her bravery and gave her a badge. Dr. Skirth appeared as Carlton's teaching assistant. During the interview with Eddie, Carlton, despite being a young man, showcased many remarkable successes. His corporation was exploring resources outside of Earth. Eddie began to ask Carlton about his illegal activities, including accusations of cheating by the pharmaceutical company and building his company on a mountain of corpses. In response, Carlton had Eddie's recording equipment dismantled and terminated his employment. Eddie's actions will change his life, even turn his life into a tragedy. The editor-in-chief does not accept Eddie's baseless accusations against Carlton. Eddie was fired. This arrogance not only affected him, but also, and she was also fired. Angered by Eddie's actions, she returned the engagement ring and walked away from him. At the same time, the remaining samples were transferred to Carlton's research lab. The police officer, now possessed by the parasite, entered a residential area and, in a fit of hunger, walked into a small restaurant, and she caught a fish, devoured it ravenously. The owner of the tried to stop her, but was killed by the monster inside her. The people ran away in panic. A group of young men attempted to confront the creature but were also killed when it shot out spikes. Spotting an old woman with a hunched back, the monster identified her as a potential new host. 6 months later, Dr. Skirth discovered that the parasites needed a host that breathed oxygen to survive, confirming the success of their experiments with rabbits. Carlton urged her to speed up the experiments on humans, but she refused, arguing that it was too soon and could compromise ethics. Nonetheless, they began the human trials. Eddie is now a drunkard. It's unfair. The person who made him unemployed is talking endlessly on TV. A bar patron recognized him, but he walked away out of boredom. On the streets, he encountered Maria, a homeless woman who made a living selling old newspaper clippings. Out of pity, Eddie bought a newspaper from her for $20. Entering Mrs. Chen's supermarket, he was met with kindness from Mrs. Chen, who reminded him to practice meditation to alleviate his stress. However, a robber soon entered the store, threatening Mrs. Chen and demanding protection money. Eddie, hiding behind a shelf, was powerless to stop the armed robber, who ultimately stole a bottle of wine and some money before escaping. Mrs. Chen looked at him with tired eyes. When he got home, he saw the couple kissing passionately. Eddie suddenly remembered his ex-girlfriend. Eddie looked at the overdue credit cards and other notification calls. Almost everyone refused him. He marked the dishwashing job on the newspaper. He tried to heed Mrs. Chen's advice by taking a meditation CD and starting a meditation practice. Unfortunately, he was soon interrupted by less than 3 minutes. The guy next door turned on loud music. At the Life Foundation laboratory, an experiment on humans is being conducted. The volunteer test subject this time is Isaac, and Carlton begins to use sweet words to seduce him. Carlton saying that the planet is gradually collapsing and only Isaac can change this. Carlton puts his hand on the glass, affirming that they will succeed and promises not to abandon Isaac. Then, he orders the staff to release the parasite. The monster is green, wet and slimy. Isaac panics and screams as the monster climbs on him. The monster is gradually seeping into the host's body. The biological data shows normal, but in less than a minute, the person convulses and dies shortly after. Eddie still walks on the same road home, but he does not see Maria. He realizes that someone is following him. It is Dr. Skirth. She says that she is working for the Life Foundation. She reveals that all of his accusations about Carlton are true. The number of people being used as guinea pigs for experiments is increasing, and they are dying. Hearing this, the righteous person inside Eddie rises. Skirth confides that at first she thought it was right, but now things have gone too far. She cannot report it to the police because Carlton's power is too strong and he is dangerous. Eddie knows how dangerous Carlton is. He made Eddie lose everything that is most important in his life. Then, Eddie tells her to ask another knight for help. He will not participate in this mess. Eddie accidentally passes by his old house and has just returned home. She introduces her new boyfriend to him. The new boyfriend gives them space and walks into the house. She introduces her new boyfriend as a surgeon. Eddie says he misses and very much. The two of them were about to get married, but now they have broken up. He hopes that they can get back together, but she refuses because he took advantage of her. Eddie held their engagement ring, looked towards the Life Foundation, and accepted the Dr. Skirth's request, simply because he had nothing left to lose. Dr. Skirth hid Eddie in the car and took him inside. She said that overpopulation and climate change were two things that Carlton could not control. Carlton had sent a spacecraft into space to find new life, accidentally encountered a comet containing millions of organisms, and they brought some samples back to Earth. They were called symbiotes, and they could not survive on Earth without a host. A patrolling guard approached. Skirth pushed Eddie into the lab to get information, and she distracted the guard. Inside the lab was a cold blue. Eddie took out his phone to take pictures of these real images. Some people died, some were in a coma. He accidentally met his homeless friend Maria again. Wanting to save Maria, he entered the wrong password and accidentally activated the alarm. In an emergency, he used a fire extinguisher to break the glass. Maria escaped and pushed him down. During the struggle, the monster in Maria's body switched to Eddie's body. Then Maria fell dead. The alarm kept ringing. Eddie quickly ran outside. He accidentally ran up the wall and then knocked down two guards. He also used his foot to kick the iron door and ran out and crashed into the fence in an unbelievable way. The guards were chasing Eddie. They had a whole team of cars, but when they got closer, they lost track of Eddie. It turned out that he had climbed up a tree. When he got home, Eddie contacted Skirth to see if she was safe. He started to get very thirsty and then extremely hungry. He ate all the food in the refrigerator, even took out the trash can and ate the rotten meat deliciously. Then, he ran into the bathroom and vomited. Eddie didn't know what happened to him. While brushing his teeth, he saw a stranger in the mirror, scared him into fainting. Carlton arrived at the scene of the break-in. He was furious and sent someone to investigate. At that time, another host was gradually stabilizing. He intensified the testing process to get the results soon. Eddie woke up and looked at the house that he had messed up. He checked the pictures again. The old lady who was parasitized at the beginning of the movie had traveled all the way to the airport to go to America. The new host this time was a little girl. Eddie ran to find and showed her the pictures he had taken at the Life Foundation and thought he was crazy. Eddie grabbed the waiter's food tray, took a bite, spat it out, and rushed to the other tables and punched Eddie. But Eddie didn't care and continued to eat. Feeling too hot, he took off his shirt and climbed into the lobster tank. He felt so comfortable. Dan told the restaurant owner that it was his patient. Eddie caught a live lobster, ate it ravenously, feeling hungry like he had never eaten before. Then Dan injects Eddie with a sedative and takes him to the hospital for an MRI scan. During the scan, Eddie is in pain, struggling, and screaming. Dan has to turn off the device and go in to check on Eddie's health. Dan then tells Eddie to go home and will report the results to him in a few days. On the bus ride home, Eddie keeps hearing strange voices in his head, and his actions scare the passengers, and calls Eddie to inform him that he is infected with a parasite, and they don't know how he got infected. Eddie says he can hear strange sounds and has the superpower to climb trees very quickly. However, Dan can only help him with a few sedative pills. The next room plays loud music, which makes Eddie angry. He warns the guy to turn off the music and scares him, making him pale with fear. At this time, Dr. Skirth's actions are also discovered. She is arrested and taken to Carlton. Skirth tried to explain that what she did was because she was agitated. Carlton had convinced her to save the lives of the people here, and that her friend was in danger. He promised to change his ways. Skirth was caught off guard and believed Carlton's. Skirth told confesses that Eddie was her partner, and Skirth's reward is a monster. At this time, Eddie was taking food out of the oven. He heard a warning from inside his head not to open the door, however, he still opened it. A group of strangers rushed in and grabbed his shirt. They were Carlton's henchmen. Eddie quickly surrendered, but the new person inside him stopped him. The voice inside him thought he was embarrassing them. The henchman asked Eddie where the parasite was and shot him with a tranquilizer gun. With his arrogant nature, the monster inside Eddie did not allow him to give up. It helped Eddie deal with this person. Eddie's hand transformed into a rope to strangle one of Carlton's henchmen. He hit one of them with a chair, and his hand turned into a strong fist, knocking out another. Carlton's henchmen were all defeated by him. The demon inside him urged him to chew off the heads of Carlton's henchmen, but Eddie refuses to comply. Another henchman hiding outside was also defeated by Eddie. He quickly ran out of the house. Seeing that the enemy had a gun, Eddie jumped down from the window. At this moment, his strength gradually became clear, and Eddie rushed into an apartment downstairs. On the other side, Carlton's henchmen opened fire, and Eddie blocked the bullets with a black shield made from his arm. The henchman set the image of the fight to Carlton. Carlton was surprised that Eddie had mastered the parasite. Eddie looked into the car window and saw a reflection of a demon. He didn't want to accept that he had turned into such a form and said that monsters were ugly. The monster got angry and hung him on the wall. While Eddie and the monster were arguing, a drone attacked him. The plane crashed into the wall and exploded. Eddie took his motorbike nearby and he ran away. However, every move Eddie made was being monitored. The commander sent his subordinates to capture Eddie and launched countless drones. The monster and Eddie helped him get past all these planes. The Eddie guy had never had such an interesting experience. The plane seemed to be too useless compared to Eddie's current technique. Carlton watched everything that was happening outside and said that this was unbelievable. A plane was following Eddie closely, and the monster threw tentacles to grab a car door to block bullets for him. He turned back to see that two planes were still following closely. One had missed the car on the side of the road, while the other almost hit Eddie, forcing him to brake suddenly. A car cut across the intersection, and Eddie swerved to avoid a spectacular collision. Being chased by enemy cars, Eddie sped over a steep slope and encountered a dead end. The monster helped him create a spring, shooting him through this area easily. Two big cars were still following, and the monster cleared the way for him to move forward. Two other cars were waiting to rush out and press Eddie's car, thinking that they could not escape, but the two cars were still left behind. Due to carelessness, Eddie was hit head-on by another car, leaving his body seriously injured. The bald man stepped out of the car and looked at Eddie's pitiful appearance. The monster stretched out its tentacles to attack the bald man, and Eddie's injured body began to heal. At this time, Eddie's body was the monster's true form, with sharp teeth and a long tongue. One man used a gun to attack the monster, but it turned around and chewed on this man's head. The monster jumped over the cars and then leaped into the river, crossing it in the blink of an eye. Eddie looked at his leg, which was no longer broken. Exhausted, he sat down to rest. The monster appeared, introducing itself as Venom. Venom said that it and Eddie were now one. Eddie blamed Venom for chewing on a man's head. Venom replied that it was necessary to do so to replenish its fuel, and explaining that it needed Carlton's missile. Eddie asks Venom if Venom is going to eat anyone else, and the answer is yes. Venom says that if they work together, they both have a chance to survive. As Anne is driving home, Dan calls her, informing her of Eddie's test results. Dan wants Anne to take Eddie to the hospital immediately. The police block Eddie's house and tell Anne to be careful because there will be a lot of deaths tonight. At the lab, a parasite is found dead next to Dr. Skirth's body. Carlton tells his men not to kill Eddie, but to capture him alive and bring him back immediately. Eddie goes to the newspaper office, but his former colleague stops him. Venom tells Eddie to chew off his colleague's head to solve the problem. Eddie stops Venom because his colleague has a family. He then opens the door and goes out. Venom learns that what Eddie needs to do is climb up. Venom helps Eddie easily climb to the top of the tower. Venom found this place peaceful and beautiful. A plane took off. The noise of it made Venom disappear. Eddie slipped from the top of the tower Luckily, Venom grabbed the railing in time to save both of them. Venom also helped him break into the building owner's room. Eddie said Venom was about to kill him. Venom replied that if Eddie died, it would die too, because there was no more suitable host than him. Venom began to like this guy. Eddie wrote down the top secret information and left. Venom advised Eddie to prepare to jump down, but Eddie decided to take the elevator. Eddie had just stepped outside when the police pointed their guns at him. He transformed into Venom's form to play with them. Venom grabbed the grenade, crushed it into smoke, then held a second grenade in his mouth. In the hazy smoke, Venom began to attack people one by one. Some policemen were beaten to a pulp by Venom. It also gathered the police's guns into balls and threw them back at them. The police used a stun grenade and threw it straight at Venom. He climbed up the iron scaffolding to avoid the rain of bullets. An iron bar fell to the ground. Venom jumped down, grabbed a man's leg and used him as a hammer and threw him away. Venom lifted another man and threw him down. A police member fired at Venom. At this time, seeing Venom about to eat the police, Eddie stopped him, and had just appeared when she saw the monster about to eat a person. She turned and ran away. Eddie turned back into human form and ran after her. He explained that monster was inside his body, and he felt scared. He needed her help. She agreed and opened the car door to take him to the hospital. In the car, and said she would do another MRI. Venom told Eddie that it didn't like it because it would hurt Venom, and asked Eddie if it hurt. In his mind, Venom reminded Eddie to honestly apologize to and about the past before he lost the chance. Eddie looked at the person he had hurt. He sincerely apologized to her for what had happened and that he loved her very much. And tears welled up because she had been waiting for this sentence for a long time. He felt very cold and borrowed her shirt to put on. The two did not know that a plane was following them. The little girl infected with the parasite at the airport had reached the laboratory. She grabbed Carlton's neck and began to change hosts. At this time, Eddie and had arrived at Dan's hospital. Dan said that Eddie's heart had a problem. Venom in his mind said that he could cure Eddie. During the argument, Venom grabbed Dr. Dan's neck and lifted him up, and quickly turned on the MRI device to save Dan. The parasite in Eddie's body was very afraid of high frequencies, so it had escaped from Eddie's body. Dan quickly closed the glass door. Eddie inside the glass pointed at the monster, blaming the monster for trying to kill him, and then he left. While and explained everything to Dan, Venom had sneaked through the air filter and escaped. Dan looked at the monster and saw that it had disappeared at some point. Venom had invaded the little dog in the next hospital room. Eddie had just opened the elevator door when Carlton's subordinates shot tranquilizer into him. The little dog saw this and decided to choose, and as its new host. Eddie woke up and was tied up in Carlton's lab. Carlton asked Eddie where his specimen was, but Eddie said he didn't know and wouldn't say if he knew. Carlton said that humans were on the brink of extinction and him were rebuilding the world. Humans and symbiotes would fuse together. However, Eddie still does not reveal where Venom is. Carlton got angry and turned into a monster just like Venom. He still asks about Venom's hiding place, but Eddie was determined not to answer. Seeing that Eddie was no longer valuable, Carlton ordered his subordinates to take Eddie away and deal with him. The monster inside Carlton said that there were thousands of them on his planet, and that they would go together to welcome the symbiote army to Earth. Carlton's men took Eddie into a deep forest. He pointed a gun at Eddie. Venom appeared, bit Carlton's men's head, then grabbed Eddie's collar and kissed him passionately. Venom then returned to Anne's form, and she woke up, terrified because she had just chewed off the other guy's head. Eddie said he used to do the same. Venom explained that the parasite in Carlton's body was Riot, the leader of the symbiotes, and that it had a whole arsenal. Venom urged Eddie to stop Riot, and wanted to join them as well. However, for her safety, Venom did not allow it. Carlton ordered the scientists to start the spaceship, and he would pilot the ship into space himself. Venom warned that if Riot was not stopped, he would bring the entire symbiote army to occupy the Earth. Initially, Venom had been like the evil symbiotes, but now he had decided to stay on Earth, his chosen planet. On his planet, Venom, like Eddie, was also a failure. However, here, Venom could be a superhero, and he was beginning to love the Earth. And what changed Venom was Eddie. Carlton began entering the password to launch the rocket, which would take place in 5 minutes. A staff member behind him wanted to cancel the rocket launch process, but Riot discovered this and killed the person. Riot then used its arm, which transformed into 2 blades, to eliminate all the scientists. Meanwhile, Venom and Eddie stood outside the lab. Venom informed Eddie that Riot possessed extremely unique and highly lethal weapons, giving them almost no chance of winning. Nevertheless, with a reckless strategy, Venom rushed toward Riot. He blocked Riot's head and declared that he would not allow it to destroy this world. Riot became angry, one hand transformed into a spiked hammer, while the other became a sharp knife. Venom turned into a shield to block the attack and grabbed Riot's face, smashing his head into the ground before kicking him away. However, Riot retaliated by slamming his hand on the ground, causing countless sharp spikes to stab toward Venom. Although Venom tried to strangle Riot, he was ultimately knocked back by the spikes. Riot then delivered fatal blows, peeling Venom's skin off Eddie's body. As Riot was about to swallow Venom, Eddie reached out to merge with Venom. The two monsters were now fused and fought fiercely, with Eddie and Carlton not holding back against each other. However, Riot proved to be too strong. He absorbed Venom into his body. After running for a while, the sound waves suppressed Riot. Venom also, thanks to that, separated from Riot. Free of the parasites in his body, Carlton attacked Eddie repeatedly. Eddie fought back and delivered a punch that knocked Carlton down, kicking him off the spaceship. However, as soon as Eddie turned his back, a knife pierced his body, and Riot was the one who finished him off. Riot then ran toward the spaceship and crawled inside. Venom appeared, clinging to Eddie and reviving him. Venom pulled out his sword and jumped onto the spaceship. Riot looked at Venom through the glass window and scolded him for being a traitor. Outside the spaceship, Venom bid farewell to Riot and used his own knife to stab the ship. The spaceship quickly exploded, destroying both Riot and Carlton. Venom fell from above, using his own body to protect Eddie from the intense flames. Eddie fell into the lake below in pain. After that day, Eddie and Ann sat down to talk. Eddie shared that he would no longer be a reporter and wanted to focus on writing, and expressed her condolences for Venom's loss. Eddie did not respond and talked about their kiss in the woods. He said he still loved Ann very much now, and also had faith in Eddie again. Actually, Venom was not dead. It became Eddie's most enthusiastic emotional advisor. Saying goodbye to Ann, Eddie left. A blind old man reminded him not to give up on her. Venom complimented the dog that it looked delicious. Eddie and Venom negotiated together that Venom could not eat anyone, because there were good and bad people in this world. Venom could only use extremely bad people. Venom agreed to the deal. Unfortunately, Venom did not know how to distinguish between good and bad people. Eddie went to Mrs. Chen's store. He asked Venom what he wanted to eat. Venom happily chose potato chips and chocolate. Just like before, Eddie heard someone shouting. It turned out to be a gangster who came to collect protection money from Mrs. Chen. Venom grabbed the gangster's arm. He warned the gangster not to bully others, otherwise he would eat all gangster's limbs. Explaining was too tiring, so Venom swallowed the villain into his mouth. Mrs. Chen saw the terrifying scene and looked scared. Eddie said he was a parasite, then wished Mrs. Chen good night and left. Venom got angry when he was called a parasite and demanded Eddie apologize to him. Now, with their current abilities, both of them can do whatever they want. That's the end of the movie. Venom was originally a ferocious creature but lived with a righteous, gentle host. Although the host was a bit shy, the two of them got along and even saved the world from evil people. Thank you for watching today's recap movie summary. Remember to subscribe to the channel to watch the latest videos. See you in the next Recap the Movie.